March 2025. Intel Headquarters, Santa Clara, California. A man named Lip-Bu Tan walks through the front door for his first day as CEO. He doesn't call an all-hands to unveil a bold new vision. He doesn't fly to New York to reassure Wall Street. He stands in front of the entire company and says something that no CEO is ever supposed to say. We are no longer a top 10 semiconductor company. The room goes silent. This is Intel, the company whose logo was stamped inside a billion computers. The company that invented the modern microprocessor. Andy Grove, Gordon Moore. These aren't just names, they are the founding mythology of Silicon Valley itself. And the new CEO just stood up and said, "We lost. Not to a competitor. Not to bad luck. To ourselves." And what he does next is either the most audacious corporate comeback in tech history, or the most expensive last gasp of a dying giant. This is Intel's last stand. Intel didn't collapse overnight. It spent 20 years digging its own grave, one bad decision at a time. To understand where Intel is today, you need to understand one thing first. Nobody beat Intel. Intel beat Intel. It starts with a phone call in 2006. Steve Jobs calls Intel. He's building something called the iPhone. He wants Intel to make the chip inside it. Intel says no. The margins aren't good enough. Not worth our time. That market Intel walked away from? It became the largest source of chip demand on the planet. ARM-based processors took over mobile. Qualcomm, Apple, Samsung, they all rose to dominance in the space Intel abandoned. Intel kept sitting comfortably in PCs and data center servers, convinced it was still king. Then AI arrived. And AI doesn't run on the kind of chip Intel is good at making. AI runs on GPUs, chips designed to process massive amounts of data simultaneously, in parallel. Nvidia had been building that technology for 20 years. Intel showed up to that fight with the wrong weapon. Then its manufacturing started slipping. In semiconductors, the game is measured in nanometers, how thin you can make the circuits on a chip. Thinner means faster, more efficient, more powerful. TSMC and Samsung kept pushing forward. 3 nanometers, 2 nanometers. Generation after generation. Intel kept missing its own deadlines. One delay. Then another. Then another. The manufacturing lead that had been Intel's greatest advantage for decades, gone. By the time Lip-Bu Tan walked in the door, here's where Intel stood. Losing in AI chips to Nvidia. Zero presence in mobile. Manufacturing behind TSMC. Stock down 60% in 3 years. This wasn't a setback. This was a full system collapse. Every struggling CEO promises a bright future. Lip-Bu's first move was to force everyone to stare directly at how bad things actually were. Lip-Bu Tan is not a parachute hire. He'd been on Intel's board for 2 years. He watched the decline happen from the inside. He knew exactly what was broken. But knowing what's broken and being willing to say it out loud in front of everyone, that's a different kind of courage. His first move wasn't a new strategy deck. It wasn't a press release about innovation and transformation. He started visiting customers. One by one. In person. He asked a single question: what is Intel doing wrong? Then he took every brutal answer back to headquarters and read them out loud to the whole company. He told employees, "I need the most honest feedback you can give me. We have to face reality." That statement landed like a grenade inside Intel's culture. Because for the previous 15 years, the culture at Intel worked like this. Problems existed. But you didn't talk about them. Delays happened. But you called them schedule adjustments. Products failed. But you reframed them as strategic pivots. Every layer of management filtered out bad news before passing it up the chain. By the time information reached the top, everything looked fine. Lip-Bu saw the whole machine. And he decided to break it. He dug into Intel's org structure and found teams with 8 layers of management between a frontline engineer and a final decision. 8 layers. An engineer has an idea. That idea needs 8 people to sign off before it becomes action. Worse, he discovered that for years, Intel measured a manager's value by one thing: how many people report to you. Bigger team, higher status. So every manager spent their energy expanding their empire. Nobody wanted to be lean. Everyone was building fiefdoms. The result, a 100,000-person company that moved like it was underwater. Lip-Bu's diagnosis was simple and devastating. This isn't a people problem. It's a system problem. And the system has to come down. He said Intel needed to change its culture. But culture doesn't change in a town hall meeting. It changes when people feel it. April 2025. Lip-Bu Tan has been CEO for less than 60 days. He announces layoffs of more than 25,000 people. 120,000 employees. Down to 75,000. He cuts 50% of management layers. He cancels factory expansion plans in Germany, Poland, and Costa Rica. He starts stripping out non-core businesses. Cut after cut after cut. This is brutal. And he doesn't pretend otherwise. 25,000 people means 25,000 families. Lip-Bu doesn't hide behind corporate language. He personally writes to every employee who is let go. Thank you for your genuine dedication to Intel. Then he changes the single metric Intel uses to evaluate managers. No more headcount. No more empire building. From now on, the only question is, are you doing the most important work with the fewest people possible? And then he does something that genuinely shocks people inside Intel. He puts engineers directly into the executive leadership team. For most of Intel's recent history, the C-suite was dominated by business, finance, and sales executives. Engineers built things. Executives made decisions. Lip-Bu flips it. He says, engineers are Intel's most valuable asset. They should be in the room where the decisions get made. That shift, more than the layoffs, more than the restructuring, signals something fundamental. This company is trying to become a completely different animal. Intel's biggest bet isn't a chip. It's a promise, and nobody believed Intel could keep promises anymore. Let's talk about the thing Intel's entire comeback actually hinges on. It's called 18A. That stands for angstrom, a unit of measurement 10 times smaller than a nanometer. 18A is essentially 1.8 nanometers. That puts it in direct competition with TSMC's most advanced manufacturing processes. Here's what that means in plain English. The more advanced your manufacturing process, the more transistors you can fit on a chip. More transistors means more performance, less power consumption, smaller size. TSMC has been the undisputed king of advanced manufacturing for years. Every top chip Apple's processors, Nvidia's AI accelerators, gets made at TSMC. Intel's goal with 18A is simple and enormously ambitious. Build a factory good enough that the world's best companies choose Intel over TSMC. When Lip-Bu took over, 18A had a problem. The yield rate was terrible. Yield rate is the percentage of chips that come out of manufacturing actually working correctly. Low yield means most of what you produce is trash. It means high costs, unreliable supply, and zero customer confidence. Lip-Bu's response was almost unthinkable in this industry. He opened Intel's factory data to outsiders. Manufacturing data is the most closely guarded secret in semiconductors. You do not show it to anyone. He brought in KLA and PDF Solutions, the industry's top yield improvement specialists, and let them inside. He didn't care about appearances. He cared about fixing the problem. Industry standard is 7 to 8% yield improvement per month. Intel hit that number. Then held it. And then something happened that nobody had predicted. External customers started knocking on Intel's door. Can we use your 18A process for our chips? Apple is reportedly in discussions about Intel's next generation 14A process. Elon Musk's terafab is in talks with Intel about future manufacturing. For the first time in years, Intel's factories are being taken seriously as a real alternative to TSMC. He decided to reach out to the company that humiliated Intel. And it might be the smartest thing he's ever done. Now here's the move that genuinely surprised everyone. Late 2025. Intel and Nvidia announce a strategic partnership. Nvidia takes a $5 billion equity stake in Intel. The two companies will deeply integrate their products. Future AI servers will pair Intel CPUs with Nvidia GPUs, sold together as a unified system. The internet's reaction: Intel just surrendered. That's the wrong read. Here's what's actually happening and why it's brilliant. To understand it, you need to understand why Nvidia is so dominant. It's not just that Nvidia makes great GPUs. It's CUDA. CUDA is Nvidia's programming platform, the software environment that AI engineers use to write their code. Nvidia spent 20 years and billions of dollars building CUDA into the foundation of modern AI development. Today, virtually every AI engineer on the planet writes code that runs on CUDA. If you want to switch away from Nvidia hardware, you don't just swap the chip. You rewrite everything. That switching cost is Nvidia's real moat. It's what makes Nvidia nearly impossible to displace, even if a competitor builds equally good hardware. Intel tried for 15 years to build its own competing software ecosystem. It failed. Repeatedly. Expensively. Lip-Bu's insight was different. Stop fighting Nvidia where it's strongest. Find where Nvidia actually needs Intel. Here's the thing about Nvidia's GPUs: they don't work alone. They need CPUs to orchestrate the workload. And the world's data centers run on Intel's x86 architecture processors. That installed base, decades of infrastructure built around Intel's chips, is something Nvidia can't replace. So this partnership is really a trade. Nvidia gets deep integration with Intel's x86 ecosystem, unlocking markets where Nvidia has historically been weak. Intel gets credibility, investment, and a direct pipeline into the AI infrastructure build-out it had been locked out of. One analyst nailed the summary. Lip-Bu Tan didn't try to beat Nvidia. He hitched Intel's wagon to the fastest horse in the race. Intel isn't trying to win every battle. It just needs to win the one battle Nvidia is ignoring. Which brings us to Crescent Island. This is Intel's new AI chip and the most important product test of this entire comeback story. Its design philosophy is completely different from anything else on the market. To understand why, you need to know that AI chips do two very different jobs. The first is called training. This is where an AI model learns from massive datasets, gets smarter, develops its capabilities. Training is a sprint. It needs the most powerful chips money can buy. This is Nvidia's territory. H100S, B200S. The most expensive hardware in the industry. The second is called inference. This is what happens after the model is trained. Every time you ask ChatGPT a question, every time an AI system makes a recommendation, every time a voice assistant understands what you said, that's inference running in the background. Inference is a marathon. It runs 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, at enormous scale. And for inference, the dominant question isn't how powerful is the chip. It's how much does it cost to run at scale. A company deploying 100,000 inference chips saves hundreds of millions of dollars if each chip is 30% cheaper to buy and run. Nvidia's top-tier chips use HBM, high bandwidth memory. Incredibly fast. Also incredibly expensive. And those chips need liquid cooling, which requires specialized data center infrastructure that most companies don't have. Crescent Island takes the opposite approach. It uses LPDDR5X memory, significantly cheaper than HBM. Air-cooled. Slots directly into standard server racks. No data center retrofitting. No specialized power infrastructure. No liquid cooling systems. Lower acquisition cost. Lower operating cost. Lower barrier to entry. The strategic logic is precise. Don't compete with Nvidia where it dominates. Own the market it's too busy to care about. Second half of 2026, Crescent Island starts sampling with customers. This is the moment of truth for the entire Intel comeback. The chip either works in the real world or it doesn't. There's no spin on that outcome. So, the question we started with: is Intel's comeback real? Honest answer, we don't know yet. But here's what we do know. Something has already changed at Intel. Fundamentally. Irreversibly. A CEO publicly admits his company is broken. Lays off 25,000 people. Cuts half the management structure. Opens the factory floor to outsiders. Partners with the competitor that displaced him. Every single one of those decisions would have been unthinkable at Intel 2 years ago. Intel didn't lose because it ran out of money. It didn't lose because it ran out of smart people. It lost because it ran out of honesty, speed, and the willingness to face uncomfortable realities. Those are the things Lip-Bu is trying to rebuild. And the market is paying attention. Intel stock is up over 200% since early 2026. But stock price isn't the verdict. The verdict comes when Crescent Island lands in a customer's data center and they decide whether to order more. The verdict comes when Intel's 18A line wins its first major external customer away from TSMC. The verdict comes 3 years from now, when we look back at 2025 and decide: was this the beginning of one of the greatest corporate comebacks in Silicon Valley history? Or was it just another chapter in a long, slow decline dressed up to look like a turnaround? History is full of companies that announced transformations. It's not full of companies that actually pulled them off. Intel is trying to be one of the few that did.